Sahana vavatu, sahanao bhunaktu, sahaviyankaravavahai, tejasvinavadhitamastu, ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. You see, we're all born equally, different places, of course, with different environment, with different parents, but we all have one common struggle, and that is we're surrounded by three types of objects. And you tell me if you can find a fourth object. But just generally the three objects, starting with, for instance, you want a roof over your head. You want to have experiences in your life. You want a certain amount of financial resources. You want a certain status, to be some person, to be some well-known person, to be helping, to be known for something, to someone. This is all what we relate with common. So we all want experiences in a form of security. We want experiences that give us a sense of I'm okay, everything is fine in my life, I am a good human being, I am growing, I am slowly evolving as a human being. So this is what we all want. We want security. Even spiritual experiences, they're just really just security, right? I've had a spiritual experience, and so it makes me someone. The three types of objects or experiences that we want. And can we all relate to this? We all want one form or the other of security, right, in our life. Now, we don't really have to be gross about it, like big house, a big car. This is all obvious. But we're talking about very subtle forms of reassurance, like validation or being seen or being, some form of a position, having meaning and purpose in life. This is also a form of security, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Having meaning and purpose in life. This is huge. Books are written about this. Here's how to have or discover your meaning in life. Fair and square, we all need this. Now, suppose you didn't have meaning in life. How would life be then, right? No purpose, no meaning for something higher than just sort of, survival. It wouldn't be very fresh. It wouldn't be very, exciting at all. So this is healthy. Another type of object is we need, for instance, just because you've made money or you have established yourself as a person in the society, you have children, you have, a job, you've done something in your life. What do you want to do with that? Just keep that there, I've got that, or actually enjoy it, right? Actually to say, hey, I can now, enjoy what I have. So this enjoyment, this is natural for all of us, is what we call kama. So the first one is artha, security. The second is kama. I just want to enjoy what I have. I deserve it. Nobody wants to put their money away, or, you work, 5 days very hard, and then you say, okay, cool, I've done my work, now let's work 5 days hard again. You want to take that break. So that break is that sort of, experience of kama. Another form is not only do we want to have sense of security and that sense of everything's okay in my life, and I'm also enjoying what I've earned through hard work, but I also want to not feel like I'm a fraud, like I'm some kind of a person that has to hide from society. You think that the cartels, right, are, having kind of an easy time making money, and that's true, right? But imagine a life where you have to constantly hide from, and you're constantly suspicious of other people hurting you, wishing you unwell, trying to cheat you, and there's this inner war going on. On one hand, I'm successful, but on the other hand, I am sort of this fraud person that cannot really be honest. So you really kind of appreciate the order. You cannot cheat the order here. You can make lots of money, but how that money was made will itself sculpt how I feel about myself. And that will then, of course, form new complexes that I have to work through. So if we take all these common three experiences that every human being has, sense of everything's fine, I am secure, I am stable, no one's going to hurt me, that's security. I am relatively enjoying my life, I am kind of, taking time out to, experience some divinity, to connect with people, to have some connections, some friendship. And also, I am generally a good person, a good person in society. And I feel a healthy sense of pride about that. What do they all have in common? Just here's a question. Who wants all of that?
Trying to survive.
So there's a seeker, there's a person, right? There's a subject in the presence of whom is wanting three kinds of objects. So there is a subject which requires the presence of security, for what? For whose sake? For somebody else's sake?
No.
For the subject's sake. Requires the presence of enjoyment, for whose sake? For the subject's sake. Requires the presence of virtue, for the subject's sake. So all three experiences, whether they are very gross in nature, like physical objects, or subtle in nature, like spiritual experiences, like, as they say, connecting with the Lord, japa, chanting, feeling that kind of, little bit expansiveness, whatever it is, whatever they say. All of them are really for one purpose alone. There is a subject in the presence of whom I believe that by gaining an object, these three kinds of objects, I will, what? Empty myself out, be miserable, or complete myself. Complete myself. Is this something that we can all relate with? Will there ever be a person who will ever pursue these three kinds of experiences to feel miserable? No. Therefore, there is one commonality, is that I want to be free of the limitations that I feel on myself, and by the pursuit of the three kinds of objects that everyone else is pursuing in this world, what will happen to those limitations that I'm bearing? They will be alleviated temporarily. But for how long would they be alleviated? For a short amount of time. So what does this mean? All objects, does any one object satisfy everyone equally? No. So what does then this say about the nature of an object? If an object, the joy, the inherent fullness was inside an object, would then that object have the capacity to please everyone? If the object was truly a relationship or money or whatever it is, would that object please everyone? Yes, it would. But it doesn't please everyone. What pleases me doesn't please you. What pleases you doesn't please me. This is cross-culturally for everyone. So no object pleases everyone, and no one object pleases anyone for all the time. So even if you believe, no, I've got my object, I have found my object. You say whatever you want about artha, kama, dharma, I've got my object. Come back to me in 20 years and say the same thing. Okay? This is the first re-remembrance that we have to re-remembering while here. Because what happens is the society constantly reinforces and it offers you experiences. And one of those experiences always fits in these three, which can never, by their very virtue of being time-bound and limited, can never give you that full satisfaction that ultimately you are seeking through and through every experience you've ever had in your life. There was not one experience where you said, I want this great experience for 10 minutes. 10 minutes over. No, I want it forever. So what does this mean about the person? If the person or the seeker or the wanter or the desirer or the jiva or the being, if every action is for the sake of removing limitations, what does then say about every single person in this world? Every action is only for the sake of removing limitations. What does that then say about every person, the nature of every person in the world? See? Nobody does an action to feel a sense of put down, a sense of limitations. What I want is I'm having the sense of on-me-ness limitation. There's a limitation on me, and by engaging in an action in this world, which I believe will remove that limitation, what will happen to me? I will be free of that limitation. For how long? Forever. Hopefully forever. So every action thus, relationship, job, status, security, being someone, how long do you want to live? Just 80 years or forever? That means you cannot stand limitation of 80 years. You want immortality. How much do you want to be healthy? A little bit healthy or maximum healthy? You cannot stand limitation of non-health. How much do you want to be intelligent? A little intelligent or a lot intelligent? You cannot stand limitation of non-intelligence. So no matter what example you and I can use here or come up with, it will always be one universal truth. You and I cannot stand limitations. So then what does that say about every single being? If I cannot stand limitations, that says that I must thus be, my nature is free of all limitations. And that freedom from all limitations, the word for that is actually moksha. So what is ultimately every person pursuing behind artha, kama, and dharma? Freedom from limitations. I pursue artha, security, for the sake of moksha. I pursue kama for the sake of moksha. I pursue dharma for the sake of moksha. Because if I don't pursue dharma, what's going to happen to the human being? Go back to the beginning of the conversation. I'm going to feel like a fraud, like I have to hide. And can anyone live freely if there is a limitation of being found out, a limitation of feeling like a fraud or a bad person? That itself becomes a limitation. Therefore, I want to even be free of that sense of that I have to be a constantly good person. Because if I'm not a good person, what's going to happen? The way that this order is made, things don't go very well for me. Consequences come. Look at this. If limitation was your intrinsic nature, suppose we ask the question, what is your intrinsic nature right now? And you say limitation. Okay. Who is happy with limitation? If limitations or absence of freedom from limitations was your nature, then you wouldn't seek to alleviate it when it does come. But when there is a limitation, what do? We want to remove that sense of limitation. So therefore, what must be my nature? The one who is already free. So the very action of wanting to be free from a sense of put down or heaviness or limitation or imposition of years and health and intelligence and health and whatever it is, shows you must thus be that which is limitless. Limitless means without limitation. So Vedanta is not about a belief in saying you are sat chit limitless. You are existence which is limitless. Your own experience proves it, doesn't it? Children's experience proves it. Teenagers' experience proves it. What does a teenager want? They want different things than an adult wants, but what do they still ultimately want behind all of those teenager pursuing objects? They don't want to feel that pang of desire, that limitation, that on me there's a desire, and I cannot be at peace until this desire is fully filled. So therefore, what do I do to fully fill a desire? I go and express it. This is the means by which people will get rid of these limitations. What Vedanta says is, yes, it will work, but it's a band-aid. It doesn't work forever. And so in order to come to an understanding that you are ultimately free, irrespective of all the limitations belonging to your body, to your life story, let those limitations continue, because that's the nature of this instrument that's been given to you. But you intrinsically remain free. Now you say, how do I understand this? That's a statement, Andre. But how do I live it? How do I live this statement that I'm intrinsically free of every limitation? Because until you come to understand it, it's just going to be a statement that I've heard in class. So we have to make it direct. So to make it direct, the way that Vedanta starts at a certain, in a certain manner, there are many ways to start, but in this manner, it's going to first point out where do you put your sense of limitation in. So we said clearly, your intrinsic nature is free of limitation. But then why is it that despite that being the fact, I am living my life as though I am filled with limitations? Why is that? And Vedanta says that is because you commit a mistake. What mistake? Well, we commit many mistakes. But if we were to categorize all the mistakes you've ever put into 5 types of mistakes, those mistakes would then become what's called a cover for you. But it's not really a cover. In Sanskrit, we call this a kosha. The reason why a kosha, like your body, is not covered, it's not actually covering you, Atman, is because, look at space. Can an object cover space? How are you going to cover space? If I have a lid or whatever, a bucket, and I put a lid over it, and you say, oh, I've covered space. Have you covered space? No, you've just put a lid over the jar. That's it. You can't cover space because the space inside is the exact space outside. So if you can't cover space, and space is consciousness, consciousness is not space, remember? Space is consciousness. Then what to say of consciousness? Can an object cover space? No. Can air cover space? Or could we say that air is accommodated by space? Yeah, air is accommodated by space. But air does not cover space. Okay? So now we go outside the Earth's atmosphere. There's no air over there. So therefore, air never covered space in the first place, because the space outside the Earth's atmosphere is the same space here. So if nothing covers space, and space is consciousness, and consciousness you are, then what to say about anything covering consciousness? Okay. So the first thing to understand is we're now going to engage in an inquiry about 5 kinds of mistakes that on a daily basis you commit. And why do we commit them? Because you've been committing them since beginningless time. A long, long, long time. This life is enough if you don't into that thing of beginningless time. That's because I know the Westerners will resist that strongly. So I would say this life only. You see, when we're born, we say things like, "Oh, my tummy hurts. I'm hungry. Oh, I'm not such a short person. I'm too tall, or I'm not as pretty as she is." So our language gives it away. Our language associates that all these features of the body, which is really just borrowed from the earth. Your body is borrowed from the earth. Once upon a time, this thing that you're wearing now, there it is, made of flesh and bone, this was all worms. This is all worm matter once upon a time in the soil. Hey, this matter that you're wearing now, can you believe it? 60 million years ago, it was part of the dinosaurs. Maybe a toenail or a piece of poop is coming out. And that poop you're now made of, your body. So constantly, all the matter in this world gets recycled. The water that we are drinking today, it's strange to think about it. That same water was drunk by the dinosaurs 60 million years ago. The water gets recycled. The earth gets recycled. All the matter and the bones, it decomposes. And even the plastics, in 1 million years, it will all be decomposed. Suppose you could appear maybe 2 million years from now on Earth. That would be quite cool, wouldn't it? 2 million years you appear. Just to see what happened. How do we do as humanity, right? And you go, wow, it's nothing here. It's all desert. I don't find any radioactive materials anymore. I don't find any plastics in the oceans anymore. It's all clear because it's all being dissolved. And then you look back and you say, I can't find any trace of what took place 2 million years ago. Not one. No scrap metal, no garbage. It's all just decomposed. It's 2 million years. And you go, wow, who would have thought that at this place, this replenished nature, there was a civilization called humanity. And here I am now walking on this soil, which is made of all of us, who at one point were in class doing a Zoom call like this, talking about what's going to happen 2 million years from now. The whole matter gets recycled. It's all we are, just recycling of borrowed material from the earth. And then we say over there, that brick is not me. This soil is not me. I'm going to fight you for that soil. The moment that soil turns into food and you consume that food, then you claim that as mine. I'm going to protect this. This is mine. And then we make a big complex about it. This is me and that is not me over there. And yet, 1 million years ago, this was also not me because this is from the earth. So, you see, when it comes to the body, this is a big, it's very intimate for a human being because we all do come with a certain instrument. And though the body is given to you, it doesn't mean it's you. But still, there is a very intimate connection that you feel with your body that you don't feel with anyone else. It's the closest, most intimate connection that we have. So once in a while, Vedanta has to remind us, or we have to be reminded by Vedanta, that when there is, for instance, a pain, maybe in your bones or the ribs or a headache or even the brain, my brain is falling, it's decomposing, it's getting older, all of it. Once in a while, we need to remind ourselves, this is all just borrowed material. This is given to me. It has its own personality, it has its own desires, its own drives, its own need for delights and pleasures. But I have to remember, once in a while, this is an instrument given to me. For 80 years, it is not mine. It is borrowed from this world. You see, just hearing this is okay, but it really does require repetition, a reminder, occasional reminder every once in a while. For instance, when I'm out here in the bush walking, it's perfect time, or when you're walking, to remind yourself, this instrument that's walking now is made of all of these materials over here. Just a composition of limbs and tissue and bone and brain and heart. Put very well together, it's able to perform these amazing things. Look at this. What is the finger made of? Okay. Suppose you go all the way down into atoms. Okay. So now, right, finger, right, and falls down, right? Gets cut. And you say, oh my finger's gone. Unfortunate. Okay, cool. Second finger, time for a second. All 5 falls down. Oh my. Okay, I'm still okay. Let's cut the arm. Oh my. Another arm. Oh my. 2 legs. Uh-oh. Unfortunate. We have people like this. We have people with half a heart. In fact, no heart, not half a heart, but no heart. I saw a documentary where it was a lady who was carrying a machine, and that was an artificial heart because she was going to get a transplant 24 hours from now. So she just came out of the hospital holding the artificial heart with 2 batteries, one's for backup, and obviously the 2 cables to her heart. And the journalist came over and said, this is very unique. Like, how do you feel? It's like, normal. It's very shocking, to see my whole life depends on a battery and a machine, but tomorrow I will get a real heart. And I'm just looking at this going, my goodness, even take the heart away, I still am as I am. And there's a person with half a brain has been taken out because they had cancer, and the only way was to take an entire brain out. Now, neuroscientists will then, pinpoint and say your consciousness is somewhere in the brain. Well, if that was the case, then by definition, if you take half a brain out, then you will be half conscious. This person was not half conscious. They were fully conscious like before. The only minus activity is they couldn't calculate very well because a certain capacity belonging to the brain was taken out. But they were still equally conscious, aware, I am as I always am, minus the calculation ability. So, this is the Annamaya kosha. Now, the next verse is in Viveka Chudamani, which I'm using to back up verse 2 from Nirvana Shatakam. So let me just read verse 2. So verse 1 we've done, Nirvana Shatakam, now verse 2. Nacha prana samjnaha na vai panchavayuhu, na vai sapta dhatuhu, na va pancha koshaha, na vak pani padam nacha upastha payuhu, chidananda rupa shivoham shivoham. Okay. So verse 2, Nacha prana samjnaha na vai panchavayuhu. I am indeed not the prana, nor the 5 vital airs. We have to understand what this is. Na va sapta dhatuhu, na va pancha koshaha. I am not the 7 components, whatever, 300 components, 5 components, 1 million components of the body. We will analyze that. Nor am I the organs of speech, or the genital, or the anus, etc. Okay. So, what am I analyzing now? What are we doing now? Pancha kosha. The five places where you commit a mistake. Why are we doing this now? Because the mistake gets committed every single day. And as long as it gets committed, you experience a sense of limitation again and again and again. And your I remains in that which you are not. Therefore, you remain limited. So we have to first point out all the things that you commit a mistake in. Just to bring it out is the teaching. Okay. So, I'm now going to continue in Viveka Chudamani. And it says, the body is not an object. This is verse 47 of Viveka Chudamani. Why am I using this? Because we've done a retreat recently, and I'm just using notes from that retreat. And it says, why is the body you, but you're not the body? Why are you free of the body? Tell me. It says, the physical body does not exist before birth and after death. It gains new attributes with the birth of every moment, like new cells get born, and is of uncertain nature. That means it's unpredictable what happens to it. It is not a single unit. That means it's not one holistic unit. You can see here it's made of many parts. And is an object of perception like anything else. Okay. So, your body is an object of perception, object of awareness. Tell me this, when that finger gets cut, do you, right, the finger is out. Is your awareness gone when the finger is gone? When the woman's heart, because some people even say consciousness is in the heart, when the heart is inside a machine, that woman says, I am. Consciousness was not isolated or bound to the physical heart. Because we have, Ramana Maharishi, he kind of said this when his mother was dying. He said, he pointed to the right of his chest. And a lot of people take that as a location, like consciousness is in the right of the chest. So they took it as a literal locality. Consciousness is somewhere over here. So now they meditate and they try to look for consciousness somewhere and feel it in the heart. Wrong. You will not find consciousness anywhere in your body. It is not in the brain. It is not localized to the heart. It is not localized to some special, the subtle, the mind. It's not localized to any one particular thing. Just like space inside a jar. Is the space inside the jar localized to this jar? Is it like isolated to the jar? No, it's not. The space is always space. It's always free of anything. You cannot localize space. It's everywhere. You cannot localize consciousness. It's everywhere. So one day, one fine day, when this body comes to an end, when the last heartbeat stops, the same I am that is true now, that remains exactly the same the moment the body stops. This is very hard to grasp because now you're saying, how do you prove that? How do you prove that consciousness, that you will remain exactly you, the same you as you know yourself to be now, a conscious, awareful, existent entity the moment the body dies? How do you know that? Remember last month how we said wherever there is a table, that's exactly where you will find the wood. That means there's no place throughout this table where the wood is not. This table represents the body. This body, this table, one day will have its, it will shatter into pieces. But wherever there is, what is giving existence to this table, to this body right now? The wood. So one day when this table shatters into a million different pieces, the wood remains, that which was giving it existence, its sense of I, that which was the table was borrowing all along, that never goes out of existence. That is the real you right now, that awareful I am in this moment, in the presence of whom there is what's called a table, what's called an object, what's called a thought, what's called pain of the body, what's called features of the body. So what I want to show, the object called the body is never away from consciousness. So you cannot ask the question, how do you know one day that when the body leaves, I, consciousness, will go out of existence? Because that implies that there are two different things. That's like saying, how would I know that the wood is going to be here when this table gets shattered? The table will get shattered. No more body, no more table. But the wood remains exactly wood. You want to throw an objection to that?
No. I'm just saying the.
Anything that is an object of your awareness, you are free of. Pain of the body, therefore pain is not intrinsic to me. The death is also an object of my awareness, because one day there will be a witness in the presence of whom there is a person whose energy is coming down, more fatigued, more kind of, it's all coming, in the hospital, you cannot really stay awake anymore, you want to go back to sleep. The whole process of the body will be an object of awareness. It is now number 2, it says the body is saguna. Saguna means it is changing in attributes. So anything that is changing in attributes, for example, in order to know a change, there has to be a change of substratum, right? In order to recognize that the earth is spinning, in reference to the non-spinning, non-moving sun, you can recognize that the earth is spinning. In reference to a non-moving background outside the train, you recognize that the train is moving. So in order to recognize right now that the body is constantly moving and asking questions and having a discussion, there has to be a presence of something that is non-changing in this moment for the body to be recognized as going through a constant series of changes from when you were a little child. Where is that body now? It's a completely different person. You wore, since you were a child, maybe about 200 bodies, 200 people so far you've had. Look at this. So there was a presence of awareness in whom there were 200 kinds of different people, a little, child, teenager, puberty, growing. Literally no connection between this physical body and the body of a little child. And yet, you were as one. Did you experience yourself as one changing entity who went through 200 changes? Or one continuous being, one continuous I am, in the presence of whom there is a body that is sometimes painful, there is a body that was very energized, there is a body that was, very kind of tired. There's a constancy of something that is non-moving. Therefore, the body cannot be stuck to awareness, because if the body was stuck to awareness, then that attribute would be here right now. If pain of the migraine or whatever, sensation or something was stuck to awareness, then even when you go to sleep, you would see like one big mole in your existence, like one big pain in your existence. But we know that the body can, that you can go to a moment where there is no pain, nothing, which means it doesn't stick onto who you are. The body is anekaha. It's not a single entity. Okay. So if you look at here the body, like bones and tissue, and can you see any single entity here in this picture? No. So they're all individual components right now. That are well put together. They have really they're just connected by the mere virtue of biology. And to that, do you have emotional connection to your bones? Does anyone have an emotional connection to their bones? Oh, my bone doesn't look very good. Huh? Does anyone do that? But when you put bones together and you put skin together, you put all of that together, what happens? I have an emotional connection to my body. Now, what am I really having an emotional connection to? What? The skin, the hairs, the tissue, the fibers, the trachea, the rib cage, the throat? What am I having a connection to? You can't find a single thing that is independent. It all depends on something else. Just one instrument, very well made, flexible instrument that's able to now operate and have a nice conversation with other people. And then body is inert. How about iron? You take iron or potassium or calcium, in the lab. Let's put some iron and potassium together and cook something up. That's what your body's made of. Same thing, inert. and it's an object of perception. So like we said, anything that is perceived cannot be intrinsic to you. The knower can never be the known. In order for the known to be known, there has to be a knower which is free of the known. For the eye, the physical eye, to perceive color, the physical eye has to be free of color. If the eye had an attribute of redness, then when the physical eye sees, everything would be red. Therefore, for the eye to see red and green and blue, the eye itself, sight itself has to be free of red, green, and blue. In that same way, for awareness to recognize distinctly dopamine release, that's pleasure, and pain in the body, it has to thus be free of both pleasure and pain. Therefore, let's not attribute pleasure, especially bliss, any kind of bliss, to consciousness. Because bliss always comes to an end. Anything that comes to an end, in the presence of whom is that recognized? In that which doesn't come to an end. And that is the Sakshi, the witness. Okay. Now let's move on to, what have we discussed so far? What's this called? Annamaya kosha. What does the word anna mean? Food, anna. And maya means modification. So that means your body is a modification of food. When food is out there, thank you, but when it's here, it is now mine. So therefore, every once in a while, Vedanta reminds us, okay, there is this body, it wants to experience, wants to go to massage parlors, and it wants to have, whatever it is. But let me just understand, it is just carrots, a bunch of carrots that I've eaten yesterday. It's just a bunch of all the food that are being, served by wonderful people. So it just helps you to have an objective relationship every once in a while. Does that hurt? Is that a hurtful thing to do? Just to have an objective relationship with the body every once in a while and say,
It's my very own modification of food.
Modification of food, yeah. Now, we're not saying, use this to sort of, become this weirdo, right? Oh, I don't now need to pursue pleasures. I'm just a bunch of food. You're a bunch of food. I don't need to do any of this. I don't need to do massage parlors. I don't need to have intimacy. This is all weird. So Vedanta is just asking, remain like a normal person, but every once in a while, appreciate, look at this instrument that we've been given, and just reassess it by the mere virtue of knowledge. It is food. It does come and go. It is just, this body will not be there in 5 years from now. It will be a different person, totally different. I know the face will be the same, but that's, thank God, so we can relate to other people. But it would be really good if the face changed every single year.
It does change.
And the gender also changed, totally changes. Huh?
Don't wish that.
That will be a great self-inquiry tool. You'll be like, wow, look, last year I was this guy and I was so attached to him, and his good looks and this and that. Oh, now I'm just this, And then next year you're a different gender altogether, right? But all throughout, I am. Why didn't God do that? Because then we wouldn't be able to identify you. So there has to be a certain consistency among spaces. Yeah. Now, Pranamaya kosha. Now the word prana and maya means modification. Okay. The prana endowed with the 5 organs of action. What are the 5 organs of action? Speech. This is how you act with the world. Through speech, grasping, walking, procreating, and excretion. That's also helps you to, without excretion, what to say about other things. So these are the 5 organs of action. When it says action, it is by means of which you conduct yourself in this world. That means 5 organs of action. So the 5 organs of action, including this thing called prana, constitutes the Pranamaya kosha. And it becomes a covering as if covering for you, Atma, the self, and it is pervaded by which this body becomes alive and engages in all activities. Okay, let's explain this. So the word prana means in English, there are several words. The word one is energy. What do you mean by energy? Because energy is a very vague word. Life force. So, for instance, think of it as a robot who, when you infuse it with electricity, starts to move. Now, the robot says, I am alive. You know, I am infused with electricity, therefore I am alive. Now, in that same way, when the air here, do you identify with the air over here? Because prana is sometimes called vital air. This is very interesting. Do you identify with the air here? No. The moment it enters the nostrils, what do you say? I am alive. If you want to know what prana is, right now, including those on Zoom, just don't die out on me. I want you to take a deep breath and hold it. While holding it, notice what's happening with your energy levels, with your prana. Notice how it feels to be without that life force. Keep holding. Okay, breathe. Imagine forgetting to say breathe in class. I'm like, okay, now just keep on doing that. Yeah, let me just see some things over there. Oh, what happened? Okay, so that's prana. So when you breathe, so you don't identify with the air. The moment we breathe in air, we say, I love being alive. So even aliveness is not intrinsic to your nature. This is huge. In the world, we all say, I am alive. I just want to be alive. Even aliveness is another mistake that you commit. You are not aliveness. Aliveness is you, but you are not aliveness. You're neither aliveness, nor are you death. Aliveness belongs to prana. Sentiency belongs to prana. Therefore, no, you are not alive. What do you mean I'm not alive? You, consciousness, are not alive. Aliveness is you, but you are not alive. Just like prana, again, is this table. The table is the wood, but the wood is not the table. You see this? I want to be alive. I don't want to not be alive anymore. You were never alive to begin with. There was never a moment in your existence when you were alive. Aliveness always belonged to the prana. And how do you experience this prana? On a daily basis as energy levels. Sometimes, when we drink coffee, we are vibrant and alert. That's high prana. Sometimes when, before in those near death, no matter how much the person rests, what happens? They want to go back to sleep. Why? Because their Annamaya kosha, their physical cells, cannot fully host the prana. Because the cell itself is damaged. So you cannot, even though the prana is flowing, the physical cell cannot hold that energy. So therefore they need constant rest.
So when somebody dies, like I was with my mother.
Yeah. If you read about NDEs, near-death experiences, you will take a lot of comfort about people's reporting back, that I felt more peaceful than ever before. I loved my wife, but the moment I died, I didn't want to come back. It's like just a second ago, you were like, I love this life. And then a minute later, they die and they say, I was in a place that was more real than this world. I felt more alive, more energized. Why? Because I didn't have my physical body pulling me down anymore. I was just the mind without the physical body. I was just the prana without being, inhibited by the physical cells.
I've got someone in my care at the moment that's lacking oxygen, so they're on an oxygen tank. And it's amazing seeing that lack of oxygen. This thought process is not very clear, like they're
Yeah.
very confused. It's like going to a high altitude.
Look at
Like
that.
they're completely confused in what they're saying to me.
Wow.
Because they're just not getting that oxygen in, so it's not feeding the cells that oxygen.
Yeah.
And they're trying to make sense, and they don't know that they're not making sense. That's
Mm.
the strange part. Like this person doesn't even know they're not making sense. They think
Wow.
they're making full sense
Yeah.
in what they're saying,
Yeah.
and even argumentative to the point where, why don't you get what I'm saying? So they're
Amazing.
not aware that they're not making any sense.
Yeah.
It's really incredible to see.
It's incredible to know that how much we depend on food and oxygen.
Mm.
So even our relative intelligence right now is based on the amount of oxygen in this room. You open the windows now, suddenly we're all smarter.
If you get too much, if you get too much
Let's do
oxygen,
that.
you're going to have hallucinations.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you can pump it up, like the thing, if you pump it up too high, the machine that he's got,
Really?
they can
That's
start
controlled oxygen.
have seeing rainbows and
Yeah, that's controlled
High
oxygen.
altitude.
That's it.
it totally
Wow.
affects the thought process.
Wow.
Totally.
So I hope we can appreciate how dependent, your livelihood is here on so many small factors: quality of food, quality of air, quality of
Just
oxygen,
decision-making skills.
decision-making
Reliant
skills.
oxygen,
Yeah,
level of oxygen.
yeah. And environment, the sounds also, they pull the mind
And
away.
that's the prana, the prana, the life force.
Yeah, in respect to oxygen. Yeah. Now, a very good point. Actually, I'm going to draw from that. In the spiritual world, what we do sometimes is we say, I feel very energized, very pranish, and therefore I'm spiritually evolving. I remember my early years like this. We used to have this breathing. You do a lot of alternative nostril breathing, and you put yourself in this very buzzed out state. Like you're really high. You get really high. You can find us on YouTube, how to modify your breathing. And you think literally, I'm spiritually evolving. This is how we commit a mistake. Based on mere energy levels, you say, this is who I am. That is not who you are. So I want us to appreciate even aliveness. Drop this idea, I am alive. This is one of the strongest forms of wordings that you see in this world. I don't want to die. You were never dead nor alive to begin with. As time goes by, what happens to our capacity to speak or to walk? It starts to go down. So that capacity, when it starts to go, that's also prana, reduction of prana, because Pranamaya includes the capacity of walking and speaking. So as we start to mumble, as Lorena just said, we say, I'm not intelligent anymore. I'm, kind of reducing myself. I'm no longer that intelligent person who was capable and coordinated. I'm now disoriented and all this. This is, again, a mistake that we commit. So just think about how might one apply this in real life? Because the bodies will start to reduce in their capacities, for sure, for everyone. And then once in a while you say, but wait, that's okay. This is what the body does. It doesn't make a statement about me. And that itself can be such a huge shock absorber as life starts to throw you these new surprises where, maybe I fall, or maybe I'm disoriented, or maybe I cannot speak so well, or maybe dementia comes for someone, or maybe cancer starts to affect one half of the hemisphere. And then all these problems start to come. But besides all of that, you have this gentle backup, this gentle sense of reassurance. This is all the body. It's meant to go through this. Let it go through this. I remain free of the conditions of all these, eyesight is going down and hearing is going down and ability to grasp things, and you're shaking in older age, shaking like this. This will happen to some of us. Let it be. It doesn't make a statement about you. So we can start to kind of appreciate how might this be a relieving for you, that I don't take it so personally anymore, that the body will go through all sorts of phenomena. Let it go through phenomena. Ultimately, we'll go through death. You will be just fine. Okay. Now, the next is why Pranamaya is not self. So we kind of spoke about it. It says it's a modification of air, so your energy, is nothing but air input. It comes and goes out of the body like the air. It doesn't know anything except how to run your system, grasping, walking, procreating, excreting, speaking, digestion and circulating, of course. And it's always dependent. Okay. When we did that exercise of breathing in and out, were you aware during that moment? What happened? Air came in, energy started to go down, right, as we held our breath, and you were equally alert. You were equally aware during that moment. Yes? So now, if awareness, according to the script, according to the verse, if awareness was equal to prana, then when prana starts to reduce, when you're tired, you should be kind of unconscious. When you get coffee and you have lots of energy, you should be fully alert and aware. Now, I get it, the mind is alert, but awareness remains the same. In the presence of awareness, there is an alert mind. In the presence of that same unchanging awareness, there is a presence of a non-alert mind. So can you see this? How the energy doesn't affect your awareness? Because it says here it goes in and out of the body. So when the air goes, when the prana goes out of the body, I should just go out of existence. When the air comes inside the body, I should suddenly, I exist. But that is not the case. It also says it depends. So anything that depends on something else can never be who you are. Does prana depend on the air? Yes. It depends on what else? What else does prana depend on?
Life force is
Body.
The body and okay, what else does it depend on? Your life force, your energy depends on?
food. Yeah.
Food. So prana depends on food, food depends on the rains depends on the life cycle. Anything that depends on something else, you are free of. It is consciousness, but consciousness is not it. Even death depends on time. Therefore, again, it is not intrinsic to me. It also depends on the mind, doesn't it? What happens when you're extremely shy? What happens to the warmth of the body? Shyness is an emotion, or extremely embarrassed. The body gets like chilly red. That means the emotion has affected the prana, and the prana has affected the physical body. You see the connection? So that means what is that which controls the prana? The mind. What controls the body? The prana. Okay. Now, what did we discuss so far? And Pranamaya kosha. Tell me a feature about Pranamaya kosha. What is Pranamaya? Now, Manomaya kosha. It pervades the Pranamaya. We just said that when there is an emotion of embarrassment. It also consists of the 5 organs of perception. Okay. You see, let's talk about your mind. Your mind receives data of the world. Think of it like Play-Doh. It changes. You know Play-Doh?
Yeah.
Okay, you can shape it and sculpt it. What happens when suppose, I have an image of a table. When your eyes look at this table, what does your mind look like in that moment? Exactly like the table. Now, because that's why we say it's like Play-Doh. Now, because you have images or memories about tables, suppose you hate tables, what else happens to that image of a table in your mind? It recalls memories and it reshapes that table according to your likes and dislikes.
Yep.
So now, if your mind's constantly observing this world and it's replicating the world like Play-Doh, what else is it doing to the world? Oh, it's accessing memories, it's accessing feelings and conclusions about the world. So On one hand, the objective fact is there is a table. That's called objectivity. I see a table. But when I look at a table, what happens to that table? 9 out of 10 times. You can replace this with your wife or people or presidents or politicians or whoever it is, or your husband, children. What happens to that object? It gets reshaped according to proclivities, habits, sensations, how the environment is affecting you in that moment. If it's rainy, then this table is not going to look like a table anymore. It's going to kind of be like a table plus some gloominess on top. If it's sunny, it's going to be a table, but you're going to see some kind of a light, kind of like a shining object. This is what the mind does. Constantly adding things onto its shape and size. And then you say, I feel about you like this. And you say, look, I'm not trying to, be like that, but maybe you should look at, that's maybe your stuff. No, it's not my stuff. You're being like this. And I say, well, let's just do an experiment. Could it be true that perhaps your mind has witnessed this like everyone else, and you have some pressures, some inner pressures from the past that might be affecting and causing you to reinterpret this experience? Could that be the case? Mm-hmm. Now, if the person is rational enough, they might say yes. And then you say, well, look into that. Because I was not doing that. I was not intending that. I was just being myself. And you're just kind of saying that, I was ignoring you and I wasn't paying attention to you. I was in my world. Happy in my world. And you say I was ignoring you? I was right here. No. But, I didn't feel like you were present with me. Okay, look. You look into that. I cannot do anything about that because I'm being who I am. So this is how the mind operates. So all psychology is really stripping out those additions that you have added onto the table. That's all psychology does. Because as long as my mind is seeing the world with added subjectivities, then can I really operate with the world objectively? Can I really be with the world? Can I be with things as they require me to be? Not really. Because I will always be expecting something based on my own images. I will always try to kind of get something new or subtract something that I believe shouldn't be there, but it's actually my own additions and subtractions. So what Vedanta says is first, before this knowledge takes place, you have to look at your own perceptions of the world. The world is always been the world, just as it is. But when the mind comes in, it says world plus, and then it starts to add something. And all those pluses and minuses, you have to look into. Of course, that is not the subject of Nirvana Shatakam, but that is a big subject in the Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. Until then, even when we say, your consciousness, then the mind's going to hear that statement, consciousness. It's going to turn consciousness into an image, and it's going to say, consciousness, now it went away. Now I want to bring that image back of consciousness. But consciousness is not an image in the mind. It is not something to hold, like I am Brahman, I am Brahman, I am Brahman, I am Brahman. It is an understanding that despite this knowledge taking place or not, there is still an awareness of an ignorant mind. There is an awareness of a knowledgeable mind. Awareness doesn't get displaced by ignorance or knowledge. If you can own up this much, you are free. Awareness doesn't make any statement about you because there is a knower of ignorance. There is a knower of knowledge. So the knower thus must be intrinsically free of the ignorance and knowledge. Yeah, but see, I want this to be I want this to be said in a different way. You see how what the mind does? It takes a conversation and again it rearranges itself into a different form, and then where do you put your eye? You put it into that shape, into that Play-Doh. And then you bring this Play-Doh out to the teacher and say, please address that. And then the teacher addresses that and you go, okay, now thank you very much. Now you wait. Oh, another shape, right? Another shape. Now it's like a square. Now, teacher, please address this. But what the teacher says is, you see, no matter what shape your mind is taking on, the fact that there is a presence of awareness in that moment shows you no shape of the mind displaces you. That is called freedom. That's called moksha. In fact, the word samsara in Vedanta, this is one big samsara. The word samsara just means believing your thoughts are real. Believing that the pain that's being caused to the mind is real. They hurt me. What's been hurt? The mind's been hurt. The mind took on a very ugly shape because somebody fed it very bad words, and now the mind was this beautiful flower, and it heard through the eardrums, you are XYZ, and suddenly the mind became into this ugliest shape you've ever seen. And now you go, oh, I'm hurt. Now, if you can just this much understand, anything that wasn't there before, and now it's here now, that is not me. Anything that is real can never be hurt. Anything that is real can never be made to feel guilty or injured or in some way compromised or in some way damaged or in some way contaminated. What is real remains free of anything that happens to the mind. A Course in Miracles, which I love, has a beautiful statement. It says, the word forgiveness, it's a beautiful word. In Vedanta, we use the word kshanti, accommodation. That means to accommodate you, to accommodate your proclivities, your personalities, your quirks, to accommodate. In A Course in Miracles, we call that forgiveness. Now I say, what is forgiveness? Well, forgiveness is the recognition that, you see, the person cannot help themselves. That's who they are. That's what their mind is doing. It's constantly shaping and sculpting itself into a certain shape. They've been doing it for years. You can't expect them to change. They never will. You won't even change. What to say about another person? So the forgiveness, to forgive, is to first to recognize this is who you are. If there is a problem, it is not a problem belonging to you. That's a problem belonging to my own mind. My mind is seeing you like a table, and it's adding and it's turning it into something else. So I have to now work on my own ideas. What story might I be telling myself that's making my mind into this ugly shape, which causes me to look deeply so much into it that I forget that it's just another object in the presence of awareness. You see? So even though, yes, it is just the mind, but if the mind is so badly sculpted, then what's going to happen is you're going to forget. This whole application of this is just me, Sakshi, witnessing the mind, that's not going to happen. Because the mind just pulls you in. And we all know what it's like when it just pulls us in. That's why the mind needs to be decently healthy in order to remain without going on and off. Yesterday I was kind of, clear. Today I'm not clear. There's no yesterday or today. It's just constant. And how do you come to that place of constancy? First, work on the mind. Crucial. Now, the purpose of the mind is to doubt. In fact, this will be very interesting in the next section. You will see something about the mind. So, what is the composition of the mind? Just think of it like Play-Doh that reshapes itself, and it takes on a different object depending on what it sees. If it sees a picture, it takes the picture object. If it hears a sound, it takes on the shape of a sound, which is hard to visualize, isn't it? To take a shape of a sound. But this is how the mind is. It takes shapes of sounds, of sights, of smells, of tactile feedback, and of tastes. That is what the mind does. It also doubts. It's made to doubt. If you didn't have a doubting mechanism, would you still be alive today? No, you'd be like, I can just cross the road. The car's not going to hit me. I have no doubt about it. I trust everything. Okay. Now, how might we identify with the mind? How might this come? how might this express itself? When we commit a mistake and we put our I in the mind. What about no mind? I just want no mind. When there is no mind, I am the true self. You know this? Huge, huge in the spiritual field. No mind equals self. No. Because if no mind was the self, then when no mind goes away, then you would go away. But you remain exactly the same. When there is no mind in samadhi or meditation, that means there's no thoughts or emotions, I am. When the thoughts or emotions come, when someone takes a huge bell, that will be really funny behind and just induces all forms of all those five, tactile, feedback, sound, right, everything all at once, I still am in that very moment of discomfort. Okay? The sound or the sight does not displace you. When the bird comes, it goes away, I'm still there, in the presence of whom there is an absence of the bird. Now the new sound comes, a sound of a car, right? Unpleasant, but it's still a sound. That sound remains, it goes away. I am still there watching. Then a form like a tiger comes, now induces a lot of fear. And then a tiger suddenly, Tarzan comes and takes it away. Suddenly, I'm still there. So if no sight or sound displaces the awareness in the presence of whom that sight or sound comes and goes, then what to say about all the future sights and sounds that the mind is yet to take on? When the mind will be going, oh God, I have to get out of this, who am I? I'm not a good person. That's another Play-Doh, by the way. I'm not a good person, that's another Play-Doh. I'm a beautiful person, that's another Play-Doh. I am the best, I am enlightened. Guess what? That is another Play-Doh. I am not enlightened. That is another Play-Doh of the mind. That's all the mind does. Constantly takes on shapes and sizes. The wise person is not the one who identifies with a beautiful I am Brahman Play-Doh, but recognizes whether I am Brahman, whether I am a loser, whether I am a fool, whether I am this, whether I am that, I remain I. Awareness never gets displaced by whatever thought comes and goes. This requires a reminder. It really does. Every once in a while, when something happens, then the person can say, okay, this is the mind going through this. Let me create some space first. Let me create some space there. This is the mind. Mind is going through this. It's taking an unpleasant shape. Let me go through it. It has to go through it. Now, we're not saying in Vedanta to start to deny things. This is not what Vedanta is about. It's not about, hey, I just had a breakup. No, it's okay. This is all just mind, deny it. Because what happens then is anything that remains unresolved, that you don't take time to look into, that grows in the future. And it becomes an even uglier Play-Doh to deal with, which puts my eye even deeper into that. So this is why Vedanta says, hey, stop. You have to address your psychology and self-knowledge. Brahma Vidya, self-knowledge, and Yoga Shastra, which is your inner psychology, they go hand in hand. That is a mark of a healthy human wise person. Not the one who pushes things aside and discards them. Oh, it's just the table, you break the table, I still am as the wood. That's not what it's about. Okay. What about the question that I posed was, how do we identify with the mind? The first one is, no mind. What about feeling the truth? This is too intellectual. Please go into your heart. I want to feel the truth. You heard this before? Huge. Hey,
Feeling is still an object to awareness.
it's an object. You will not feel, and not only, but you were not feeling it just a moment ago. Now it came in time. So you want this Brahman to be something that comes in time, to be a feeling. Consciousness is not a feeling. It is not some spiritual, non-dual experience that is going to suddenly arise in the mind one fine day. It is here and now. It is the very presence, in the presence of whom this conversation, which your mind is now constantly changing into, is going on. Look at this. Your mind right now, I say the word A. B, C, D, etc. That's all the mind does. Changes constantly, never-endingly, and its nature is to, okay, that's going to come up, what its nature is. What's the nature of the mind? You will see now. Why the mind cannot be the self. It has a beginning and an end. It's subject to changes, and its nature is sorrow. Oh. And is an object of perception. Okay. So it's an object of perception. So again, when, right, as I said, when the attribute of sight comes, I'm there. When the attribute gets replaced by attribute of sound or tactile feedback, I am still there. So this is the first logic. Then it says its nature is sorrow. Why do you think this is? This is very interesting. I thought the nature of the mind is either neutral or at least joyful. But it says no matter whose mind gets born, as long as you get a mind, as long as you're a human being or a dog or anything, because that's also a living being, the nature by default is sorrow.
Because it's got an ending, so ending is sorrow.
Because it's limited.
Say
It's got
again?
an ending, beginning and an ending.
Okay, that's a good point. Okay.
Because all enjoyment is limited to in
Yes,
time.
so the sorrow comes
the
afterwards.
disappointment will eventually
Yeah,
surface because everything is time bound. So nothing is constantly
got it.
feeling of fulfillment is not.
Got it. That will kind of get you into that place. Oh, I missed it.
Yeah.
I want it again.
Why
Yeah.
can't I have that?
Why
feeling
can't I have
again?
that? Why can't it stay? I deserve more. Right.
Even a nice car will get rust on it and
Yeah.
eventually oxidize and
Yeah.
break down. Even it might take longer than other things, but it will still not be as shiny when you're shining it up, like my motorbike, for example.
Okay.
You'll see a scratch and you'll think, that wasn't there. Someone's gone aground with a key or something, and
Okay.
you know, a bit disappointed.
Yeah, indeed. That's a good point. This is very interesting. Just to have a mind equals pessimism automatically, in a way. So it's not really a thing of personality, it's just a common universal trait. To look at things in a more of a gloomy way, you could say, in a more of a sorrowful way, because when there's sorrow, you're not happy there, you're not thinking things positively.
Andre, is that from Vivekachudamani as well?
Vivekachudamani, verse 51. We've done this in the retreat. Natasha was there.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Because in science, I think they have, that's called the default mode kind of network. Is that what in
Sorry?
neuropsychology, it's called the default mode network? Have you heard of that?
Default mode network.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
it's-
right.
Okay.
And I don't know, I mean, that's why.
What does it say about that?
It says that your mind is naturally set to a certain bias.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
what science says.
Why? Okay. Biologically, but speaking, that would also be true. Why do you think? Because think about us millions of years ago, or 200,000, where you had to constantly assess situations for survival. You had to doubt. You were in a mode of anxiety. If it was just matter, if you get kicked out of a tribe, that's the end of your life, right? So the nature of the mind is to constantly doubt. When there is a doubt, do you feel in a state of peace or in a state of that constant, alertness, that anxiety? I have to figure it out. I can't rest until this is reassured. It's anxiety.
Even the physical level,
Yes.
that's cortisol running. When the
Cortisol,
adrenaline
yeah.
running through your brain.
And that manifests at the Annamaya kosha as the cortisol, yeah.
Affects your organs and
And
everything.
it kind of goes ties
Kidney
back
stones too, yeah.
It ties back to your first opening comment about we are a limited being and we're constantly seeking fulfillment. So
Yeah.
if we weren't limited and weren't wired that way, we probably won't be seeking fulfillment. We'd be happy with everything the way it is. I don't know.
Yeah.
It could be a lot.
Well, that's actually a good point. So that just the fact that you have a mind, you're not only seeking fulfillment because your nature is that which is limitless, but also because the mind's nature is sorrow, and thus you always want to alleviate sorrow. So that's a
right.
double mixing now,
Yes,
while we're
yes.
seeking to make things right again. Because nobody wants to live in a state of sorrow, which is really interesting. Just to have a mind, sorrow is going to be given to you.
So is that because the mind limits things?
it has to narrow down possibilities, because it cannot handle too much information all at once. Let's say 7 plus or minus 2 pieces of information.
Yeah, so the mind seems to bring in a limitation, which is,
It does.
which is intrinsically unsatisfactory, compared
Yeah.
in comparison to what you sort of intuitively know is more. There's more there.
Yeah, there's more there. Yeah.
That's interesting because in Buddhism, Buddha said suffering is a choice.
Yes and no. Depends on from what it is a choice in a sense of I can either just wallow in this doubt and not really work on things and not take the initiative to use my free will and do something about it, and say, oh, why me? I deserve more. God is punishing me, and just kind of go with that whole destiny option. In that sense, I'm not really exercising my free choice as much as I could. Another sense, I've got many more possibilities. I can ask, I can do something different, take the initiative, come out of it, think differently, reframe the situation. That is also an option given to you. So it really is a choice, but at the same time, it has to be exercised and developed.
But it's set to sorrow. That's quite, okay.
Yeah, which is why he also says there's only suffering. That's also a good reminder. The nature of a human being is suffering.
Because of suffering, I think there's more discoveries and nature of mind to discover more and to learn more. If there was no suffering, then why are we here?
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's a catalyst. Yeah.
Don't always say that in other lokas
Nothing to
where
learn.
there's less suffering, you haven't got the chance.
But you still have a mind. So even in other loka,
That's right,
the
that's
nature
what I
of the
mean.
mind is suffering.
Yeah.
So even in Svarga, heaven,
Yes.
you will still have
There's still
sorrow.
suffering.
Still have sorrow.
Just a lot less, because you're surrounded by a lot delicate more objects and less pain and physical
So
body.
in this realm, this is the best way to chance you've got to understand your true nature.
Yeah, it is. And
So
the
you
way
have that element where you can discern and say, I want to make a difference, and maybe alleviate some, sense of relative suffering, and that brings you closer and more refined into thinking about these things, about the truth of who you are. Otherwise, you're going to be just stuck in the suffering, or just having it too.
Suffering's like intrinsically unsatisfactory, isn't it? Like suffering is just not right.
Yeah, which shows you there must be something about you that recognizes I am other than that suffering.
It's an intolerable situation to be suffering.
In the psychology, they say the default mode network, when you actually do kind of meditate, or when you become aware, you will come to understand that your set point is either glass is half full or glass is empty. You have a set point according to, and this is.
Can that be changed over time?
Yes,
Right.
and that's what you're kind of, working to. You're kind of understanding where my set point is. This comes from the teachings of a teacher called Dr. Kavita Chinnayan, who's a Sri Vidya teacher, initiate. Yeah.
All right. That's interesting. Glass is either half full or half empty. Then what is objectivity then? Glass is neither half full nor half empty. No, there is a glass. No, there is a glass.
Appear to be a glass.
But if you see the half full, it's a good positive mindset.
That's what.
Because you're always looking at fullness of life. not
However, we're not speaking about being positive or negative. We're just seeing things as they are.
That's good.
Right, that's a whole different realm. It's a different paradigm shift, the Vedanta says. It's not about the world is a lovely place. This is all for coping. The world is world. What I add onto it, that's my own half full, half empty. That's called subjectivities.
Just on that, Andre, and this might be something to discuss down the track, but do you now notice more in other people when they're consistently objective and they're less, and they always see the world in a negative way? Like when you interact with people on a day-to-day basis, can that weigh on you sometimes when you see someone else is suffering and you're trying to explain to them, or maybe you're not trying to explain to them, but you notice it a lot more? It's no longer about you, because you don't see the news in a negative way, but you hear other people talk about it in a really negative way, and it's quite overwhelming for them.
You can be a lot more for them there. You can be a lot more open and available to hear them out and not make it so about me again. So that's definitely stage of evolution.
Okay.
Yeah. You can definitely take it a lot easier and you don't get so caught up in their stories. You can just be there for them, listen.
And try and help them though, or
Naturally, because that's the natural human heart of empathy. It just wants to reach out. If it requires some listening time, that is so.
Yeah.
And without imposing this, let me tell you what needs to be done. This is also a personal thing, by the way, where I need to impose and give you advice.
But you want to
why?
Actually,
Yeah.
not like that, but you have to allow them to go through that suffering and work it out for themselves.
Yes. He also recognized it's their journey, and if I just sort of interrupt that, they're not going to learn the vital parts. Yeah. In a sense, everyone's got to go through their own journey. Yeah. Okay. So now, composition of the Vijanamaya kosha. So this is the intellect. So we talk about the emotional capacity, the mind, the doubting capacity, the mind. Now, the thinking capacity, the Vijanamaya kosha. Jnana means that which processes knowledge. Another name for it is buddhi, or intellect. Its nature is the doer and the cause of samsara. Now, there's a lot more to this, but I'm simplifying the verse. It actually says it's the buddhi with its thought modifications and the organs of perception is the Vijanamaya kosha, which is of the nature of the doer. But I'm just going to go with the doer here. Okay. So, what is Vijanamaya kosha? It is that capacity which calculates 1 + 1 = 2. 4 times 2 equals 4, okay, 8. Okay, so it's that capacity which has to assess brand new information and come up with a conclusion, a solution. It's that part of you that says, I am making a decision. I am making a decision. Therefore, you become a decision maker. And thus, it becomes my problem now. Oh, I made a bad decision. I made a bad decision. So whenever that decision maker is working, that is the Vijanamaya kosha working.
Is that when the glass is half full? Is that when the glass is half full?
Yeah, it assesses based on what's appropriate. Is it half full or half empty right now? Whereas the impulsive Manomaya kosha is just, it's half full because I feel like it. But Vijanamaya has to work things out. It has to account variables in the environment. What makes it half full? What makes it half empty?
It also depends what's in the cup, isn't it? If it's a very bitter taste medicine,
Yeah.
you're glad it's half full. But if it's a lovely drink, you want it to be full of again.
Exactly. It also is part of that memory. See, memory, if you didn't have memory, then you couldn't really process anything. But also, because of memory, you can't ever really be in the now, in the truly now. Because even to stand like this, and I say, I'm going to now be in the now, the mind is actually accessing the memory, showing how to stand firm. And that's happening so quickly that it's completely evading you. So as long as there's a human body, this whole, being the absolute now, do recognize that because there is an intellect and a memory, you cannot truly be in the now. You can only understand the now, which is your true nature. But to try to say, I am in the now, because see, the true now is what? Awareness. But to say I am in the absolute now is to objectify awareness. You cannot objectify awareness. So to say, if you ever say I am in the now, you're referring to that in reference to the mind, never to who you are. Because you are never that which is an object of awareness. You are the subject because of which the so-called now is known. It is also the I thought, what we call in English the ego. However, we will say here the I thought. Now the I thought, you see, is for you different than for me. Why? Because the I thought is the longest kind of thought that you have in the waking state. All other thoughts are coming and going. But the I thought, that sense of I, not the I, not the real I, but that sense of I, that is constantly being displaced by a different sense of I. For example, you can have a dishonest I, Like right now I feel dishonest. I said something. Hey, did you know that last year I went to Himalaya, to Mountain Everest, to the top of Mountain Everest. So right now I'm like dwelling in my dishonesty. Okay. Now I say to you, last year I was in this house. Now I feel honest. So the honest I can displace the dishonest I. And the dishonest I can displace the honest I. One moment the I feels alive and confident because it's got friends. It brought friends with it. Then friends leave and now my I feels a little bit vulnerable. That's what we call the ahamkara, or the I thought, that which you are not. So your I thought is different from my I thought. Why? Because what does the I thought do? It takes the data of the emotions, of the memories, of the buddhi. It takes all of that data and it claims that as mine. So if there's a memory of a good memory once upon a time, can you remember a time when you were maybe your first, when you saw that butterfly or something? And you were like, wow, what is this? Remember that? Bring some positive memory now. Maybe it was a train ride or your first airplane ride. Okay, or maybe your first kiss, whatever it is. And you're like, oh, it's kind of happy now. So what's happening right now, while you're doing that, I'm going to remember one time when a big thing fell on my foot and I was in pain. Okay, cool. So now my I is very different from your I, because your I thought is associated to pleasant memories. My I thought is associated to unpleasant memories. So what makes a different person? When we say you've got an ego different from my ego, why is your ego different from my ego? Because your I thought is connected to different life stories, to different sensations, to different conclusions about the world, to a different Play-Doh of the mind. My I thought is connected to a different Play-Doh of the mind. So the I thought for everyone is always the same. But if there's one thing that is true from this standpoint and true from that standpoint, is that when my I thought gets displaced, do I get displaced? Does the sakshi, the witness of that I thought, get displaced? No. There is a witness in the presence of whom there was an honest I and now there's a dishonest I. From your standpoint, when your I goes from that pleasant, remember a happy memory, to a unpleasant, what happens then? You still remain you. Awareness still remains who you are. The presence in which there is a coming and going of various kinds of I's. That is who you are.
It's funny say, if someone physically dies, that narrative then belongs to other people to talk about. That narrative of who you were as a person, it's got a start date, a finish date, and it belongs to whoever knew you.
Okay.
It's no longer anything. It's just a string of stories that happen to belong to maybe the family or the tribe of people, like in dream time, the indigenous people, they have their dream time stories. It's just like a collective narrative that's running through. It doesn't really belong to one individual.
Yeah, a narrative, borrowed narratives, borrowed narratives.
99% of it is always good stories.
So that's cultural too,
kind stories.
you know.
I've never heard any, I think I have, but somebody talking about something really bad about a person when he dies.
And that comes from the place.
It doesn't come out when you're alive. It comes out when you're dead.
But it's weird to think of, because people, I know so many people that have passed away, and when I think back to their stories, it's just very abstract. It's like, okay, well, their person's not there, but the stories are just hanging around.
They're just hanging around. They're just coming out.
We bring it up at work. Oh, you remember that person? It's like a Dropbox. We get all these things.
Yeah, and that's what the stories do. They make the person kind of cope a little bit. Share the story, cope. Like my parents like to discuss always once upon a time when we were a young family. Like, oh God, not again. Why do you go there? It happened already. But it copes. It helps them cope. Okay, now, why is the Vijanamaya kosha? Why are you free of the Vijanamaya kosha? Verse 56 in the Viveka Chudamani. It cannot be the self. So this I thought is just saying, answering what David said. This Vijanamaya kosha, in other words, the I thought cannot be the self. Why? Because the I thought is nothing but a series of roles. It takes on every single moment. Now I'm a concerned father. Now I'm a curious student. Now I am a kind of a frustrated person. Now I'm a kind of playful. Now I am, curious. I want to turn on the TV. Now I am, a loving husband. Now I am a loving, a hating wife. Now I am, a whatever child. Constantly the roles are changing. The policeman comes back from work. Right now I'm a policeman, I'm firm in my words. I come back to home, now I'm a delicate father. See, so the roles are constantly changing. Your I thought is just a kaleidoscope of ongoing roles that you conclude every single moment. Now I'm ugly. Today I am pretty. Did you ever feel like this? You wake up and you feel just ugly.
You feel ugly.
Huh?
You feel pretty.
Yeah, you feel, and that means, look at it. So the I felt ugly or not beautiful, then the I feels sort of a little bit just kind of free, a little bit kind of pretty. You see this? The I is constantly changing. The conclusions that you're forming about yourself are changing. Therefore, what is the I thought? Conclusions you have about yourself. The conclusions change, in the presence of whom those conclusions are coming and going, that remains as it is. If you were as good as your role, when for example, a drunk person in a bar, I am free, I'm intoxicated and I'm free. Now comes back home, now they become sober, and then they say what? There was a presence, there was me, in the presence of whom there was a drunk person, and there is me in the presence of whom there is a sober person. It's simple as that. Make sense?
It's your personality? Does it form the persona, the personality?
It's the personality. Personality is nothing but series of people, of roles. You are literally, listen to this, you awareness are literally wearing 300 plus people per day. Completely different in personality, in roles, no connection whatsoever. In fact, they say that your mind undergoes 60,000 changes per day, or 60,000 thoughts per day. You just don't see it. Why? Because when I see the window, that's one thought. When I see the hand, that's another thought. When I see the whiteboard, that's another thought. 60,000 changes per day in reference to your I thought. Do you feel like you're changing 60,000 times? No. You feel like one continuous streaming consciousness. Uninterrupted. What's more, the I thought, it says here, or the Vijanamaya kosha, is a karta, a decision maker. If you were as good as a decision maker, then when the decision leaves, you would leave along with it. And then when a new decision comes, only then I would appear and go, oh, now I'm aware. No, I'm aware irrespective of decisions. There is Vijanamaya kosha coming and going. This is huge. That means whatever decisions you made, you might kind of convert this into a little bit of a conversation for yourself. All those bad decisions, no, I didn't make them. It's kind of relieving, right? I'm not like kind of, saying now go and do whatever you want. But those bad decisions, wow, they were just a person, like a parrot, trained to respond to situations based on what their parents have taught him or her, based on the environment and the culture they're born in, and based on the collective, all those beliefs, they're making decisions, and then they're claiming, I am making those decisions. Okay. The decisions were made, but I did not make those decisions. Vijanamaya made those decisions. A collection, a program, literally a software program to just express ideas. Therefore, once again, we're not saying now, go and change your decisions or stop choosing because you're not the one who chooses. Recognize, I am here. Decisions keep on flowing because that is the job of the Vijanamaya. And I can be okay with that.
So when, where does ethics come in when you know you're doing the wrong thing?
So ethics is inbuilt into every human being. In fact, the absence of ethics is when you have that Play-Doh, which is adding its own additions and subtractions for the sake of its own kind of, I want to play, I want my own, I deserve, the world owns me.
Yeah.
But the world doesn't own me anything. I already have everything, air, people, friends.
Manipulating the result.
Right, so you want to manipulate the world. So ethics is a natural expression of a healthy mind. So there's no question of now saying I'm not a decision maker, therefore I am now going to make naughty decisions.
So then when you are aware that you've done the wrong thing, you then have free will to correct, working on your psychology.
Yes, and not only that, you also have space not to take it so hard onto yourself.
Yeah.
Because my eye is not in the decision maker anymore. Can
You
you see
don't
that?
say that to everyone though, do you? Because some people are so attached to the concept of the Play-Doh that they're incapable of self-reflection.
That's true.
So that's a problematic sentence to offer to all, isn't it?
Yeah, that is a huge part of the work.
That's why not everyone's studying Vedanta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
why spiritual anyone with what it's doing.
Yeah, you're right. So if the Play-Doh is so strong and my additions are so vast, then a person's not going to relate to Vedanta. They're just going to be thinking, yeah, but how do I resolve this problem at home and this and my own, inner demons and so on. So, we say, look, come back in a couple of years, when you've kind of cleaned up your mind. Yeah.
But isn't this the process of cleaning up the mind?
Vedanta is also cleaning up the mind.
Yeah, because if you didn't know that there was an instrument that helped you to eradicate the faults in you are using a faulty instrument, continuously using the same faulty instrument to kind of make sense, which it doesn't, but hence the seeking for the truth.
Yeah, that's a good point. So if I'm using a faulty instrument, then that faulty instrument will interpret things in a faulty result.
But if you're mentally unwell and you come to Vedanta, you will see what you want to see.
You will see what you want to see,
You'll reinforce the Play-Doh.
Yes.
Yeah, you reinforce it, You use it for an escape, for denial. This happens. People like to use Vedanta for coping, really. It's not meant for coping. It's a reality check. Vedanta is the ultimate down-to-earth reality check, saying, I've got to work on my stuff. There's no way around it.
And it expects a certain level of healthy mind for you to acquire.
It's a process. Cleaning the lens.
Yeah. And just to finish this, so Vijanamaya is also not limited. So, if you have one thought, it's not, if you have thought X, it's not thought Y. If you have thought Y, it's not thought, Z. So it is, if you have 60% clarity, you don't have 70% clarity, which is why it's pointless to try to be really, really smart. Because really, really smart is going to be 50% clarity, but there's always that 51% clarity you can have. So you can also kind of let go of this idea that I have to be this, extraordinarily smart, intelligent, well-composed, deliberate person, because that's just never going to happen in reference to an instrument. So there's also a sense of accommodation onto oneself, or forgiveness, as we said in Course in Miracles. Forgiveness, it's okay. My instrument is going to make mistakes, that's okay. It doesn't make a statement about me. My instrument will step on some toes. It's okay, when it happens, I will do what has to be done to correct it, but I'm not going to make it a statement about me. And you become so much more clear and available to do what has to be done. It's really healthy. Okay, next month we will talk about one of the most important koshas, which is Annamaya kosha. If you understand the Annamaya kosha, you will understand all human behavior, why people do what they do at once. It will really just shed so much light on psychology, on what's the motivation what's the motivation for living, what's the motivation for doing anything, and that even happiness is not who you are. Even chasing happiness or happy experiences, that's just another subtle thought. This will become evident next month. I'm going to close. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.